You're not watching this video about a cartoon lion. You're actually watching it because some part of you already knows this is about you. You have built a whole life, the routine, the responsibilities, the version of yourself that gets through the day. But if you got uncomfortably honest, you would have to admit that somewhere along the way, you stopped becoming who you were supposed to be and started becoming whoever you needed to be just to survive. You're not lost, you're just hiding. Now, most people remember the 1994 film as a colorful adventure about a cub reclaiming his throne. Now, this movie is not about a lion reclaiming a throne. It's about every adult who traded the weight of their own potential for the comfort of a smaller, emptier life. The true villain of the story is not the evil uncle, it is the terrifying comfort of your own avoidance. And to understand what is actually happening to Simba, we have to look at who he was before he ran. So Simba was a prince who understood his place in the world. He was told from birth that everything that light touches was his responsibility. When his father dies, Simba does not run from trauma of that moment. He runs from the entire identity he was born into, and he escapes into the jungle and builds an entirely new self. He becomes a drifter with no stakes, no legacy, and no failure conditions. And we usually look at this jungle montage as a fun transition into adulthood. Settling for a smaller life is not a harmless vacation, it is a preemptive surrender. And choosing a life that demands nothing from you guarantees you can never be profoundly disappointed. And there is a dark psychological underbelly to that kind of escape. Now, Simba's behavior mirrors the clinical symptoms of PTSD. He avoids triggers, he numbs himself, and he refuses to return to the site of his trauma. And mental health experts categorize his adoption of Hakuna Matata as experimental avoidance, a clinically recognized coping mechanism that feels like relief and functions like a cage. Avoidance reduces immediate distress, but it also guarantees stunted emotional growth and a depression that has no name because you never let yourself feel it. Now, trauma experts are blunt about this one because Hakuna Matata is awful mental health advice. And healing requires bringing awareness to your past pain and not burying it under bugs and sing-alongs. Now, this brings us to what psychologist Donald Winnicott called the false self. The false self is a protected performed identity people build to earn love and avoid conflict or conceal vulnerability. It's not malicious, but it's a survival mechanism. But the cost is enormous. Now, research in psychological science shows that concealing your identity, your true identity, reduces perceived self-knowledge. It leads to feelings of impurity and a deep persistent loneliness that follows you everywhere even when things look fine from the outside. Now, this is exactly what Simba is doing across that log, fully grown, eating bugs with a warthog, and pretending this is the whole story. He's going through the emotions of life that feels entirely hollow, and you know that feeling. The days that pass without meaning, the routines that you keep busy with, just busy enough not to think. The version of yourself that functions perfectly and feels like nothing. And it gets worse, because the friends you choose in that same state are rarely trying to save you. We look at Timon and Pumbaa as lovable sidekicks. They are the architects of Simba's stagnation. They are the comfort zone made flesh. Now, they are warm and kind and completely insufficient, which makes them infinitely more dangerous than an actual enemy. Their philosophy does not want to hurt you. It just does not want anything from you either. Now, Disney's version of Hakuna Matata is worth looking at closely here. In its original Swahili context, the phrase means resilient presence in the face of hardship. It is meant to help you stay present through difficulty. But Disney's version inverts this entirely. It becomes a problem-free philosophy, an escape from reality dressed up as wisdom. Now, the inversion is exactly what we do with our own pain. We take something meant to help us face reality and we use it to disappear from it. Now, this is why the film grossed $763 million worldwide in 1994 and spawned the third longest running Broadway show in history. Now, millions of adults are living in their own version of the jungle. Distraction, busyness, and endless consumption feels like living, and they are actually the prevention of it. And this leads to what psychologist Carl identified as arrested development. Now, growth only occurs by engaging with challenges. Running from them arrests maturity completely, and adults with arrested development look grown up. They have jobs and bills and responsibilities. Internally they feel like children playing dress up. They describe themselves as imposters, terrified the world will notice they have no idea what they are doing. The defining marker of this state is not your age, it is your refusal to take responsibility for where your life is going. And now you might think that Simba is just waiting for the right moment to return. But look at the dark mirror of his story instead. Look at Scar. Because Scar is not just a villain, he is the path not taken, made, manifest. Carl Jung defined the show as the unconscious part of the personality containing the traits the conscious ego rejects. Now the shadow contains not just darkness, but repressed potential, the authentic instincts stifled by family expectations or social pressure. Now Jung described the shadow as a hostile brother, an adversary that opposes our fake posturing and demands to be acknowledged. Scar represents the corruption of unresolved resentment, choosing a self-interest over duty, letting bitterness do what courage refused to. Now Simba's deepest fear wasn't Scar, his deepest fear was becoming Scar. He is terrified that confronting himself might reveal he is not who he hopes to be. His avoidance is not just guilt about his father, it is the terror of looking in the mirror and recognizing something that he cannot take back. The shadow cannot be permanently outrun, and as Jung wrote, when an inner situation is not made conscious, it happens outside as fate. Now Simba's exile does not make Scar disappear. It allows Scar to destroy everything Simba loves while he refuses to look. Now there's a psychoanalyst named Erik Erikson who mapped out the stages of human psychosocial development. Stage 5 centers around identity versus role confusion. Now failure to resolve this leads to exactly what Simba does, which is running from the pressure of who you are supposed to become. Now Erikson called this psychosocial moratorium, the gap between the secured roles of childhood and the responsibilities of adulthood. Simba's time with Timon and Pumbaa is the literal enactment of this moratorium, and the problem is his moratorium never ends. And research by sociologist James Cote confirms that identity formation extends well into emerging adulthood, because this is not just a teenage struggle. This is a story of people in their 20s, their 30s, and 40s who are still waiting for the version of themselves they were supposed to become. And it leads directly to what Erikson called generativity versus stagnation. Now generativity is contributing something to the world beyond yourself. Stagnation is self-absorption, paralysis, and the slow grief of unlived potential. Now Simba is drowning in stagnation, and this leads to the most devastating moment in the entire franchise, the scene at the pond. Now Simba is chased to the water by Rafiki, who acts as the film's therapist. Simba looks into the water and sees a diminished creature who is nothing like what he was supposed to be. And Rafiki commands him to look harder. In his own reflection, Simba begins to see his father. Now he does not see a literal ghost, he sees the living potential within himself that he spent years burying.
Simba, you have forgotten me.
No, how could I?
You have forgotten who you are.
Now you are more than what you have become. Sit with that for 1 second. That one sentence is the thesis statement of the entire film. When our actions stop aligning with who we know we are, the brain resolves the tension by abandoning the identity. Now psychologists call this the identity drift, the gradual suppression of your real needs just to maintain comfort in the life you have already built. And the terrifying part of Simba's story is not the moment he faces Scar in battle. The terrifying part is the moment he looks into the pond and barely recognizes himself. Because when we refuse to grow, we do not stay the same. We become a stranger to ourselves so gradually that we stop noticing that it happened.
Oh yes, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it.
He becomes a king who understands the capacity for destruction within himself and consciously chooses something different. Now that is what makes him better than the cub who simply assumed he would inherit the throne. Here's what Simba's return does not mean though. It doesn't mean that trauma was erased, and it doesn't mean the years spent hiding did not happen or did not cost him something real. It means his avoidance was never the final verdict. The film never claims Simba is special because of destiny. It claims he's responsible because of his relationships. He is a son, a future father, a member of a dying community. And the crown is not fame or greatness. It is the full acceptance of who you are and what you owe to the people around you. Because you cannot outrun the person you were supposed to become. You can only delay them. And the longer you delay them, the more the people around you feel the absence of what you were supposed to give. And the stakes of staying hidden are never just personal. because the world around you is waiting for the version of you that you keep postponing. So the next time you catch yourself settling for a smaller world because it feels safer, go find a pond and go look into it. And look hard, because you are more than what you have become.